All right, we there?
Tweeted.
Tweeted. Oh yeah, I got a tweet too. I always forget about that step. Hang
Important
on,
stuff.
where your tweet?
People are already asking for singing and dancing.
Just randomly.
Yeah, apparently.
That's weird.
Should get a dedicated dancer just off on the side, like that SNL skit. The
Yeah.
guy with the gold rope chain thing.
I'll just sit here and shimmy for a bit. Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's totally appropriate.
Okay, and retweeting. Done.
Oh, you're gonna buy a? What do you think of the phone stuff?
I just bought the band. I
Oh,
am
you
the
bought
most,
the band?
I just pre-ordered the band. I am the most disgruntled phone owner in the world. So no matter what I want or what it looks like or what I buy, I hate it.
So you're not thrilled about the phone? Oh, you're just saying every phone. You hate all
I
phones.
hate every phone I've had. Like this phone is garbage.
What is that phone?
This is the HTC One for Windows.
You don't like that phone?
It crashes. Or I can never just pick it up and like take a photo or do something I want to do with it. It just doesn't work. I got a 1520 a couple of weeks ago, and it was good, but the accelerometer was broken, so I had to send that back, and I haven't got the replacement yet. I wouldn't mind buying an iPhone 6 Plus S as much as I hate the iPhone, but I know it works. But they're out of stock, so I can't get one of those.
You know, but even like I like my iPhone, and people always get mad at me for like being an iPhone person, but it's not perfect. I mean, there have been times when it'll be ringing and it'll say slide to ring, and I'm like,
well, you remember,
I pick up the phone.
I bought an iPhone 6 Plus last year when it came out, and I had it for a month, and then I sold it because
you took it back. You didn't want it.
It wasn't the panacea that I thought it would be. It just,
well, no, yeah. So here's the other thing, right? I wrote that blog post, remember, about how everything sucks. Yeah, there is no panacea. I just, if you want a phone that will answer when you pick up, you get a flip phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want a phone that I can record
No.
60 seconds of video of my son playing flag football and then upload it to Facebook right there and have it work every single time. That's what I want.
Yeah, that is not possible in 2015.
I'd say, seriously? Like, I see other parents doing it. I just think it's me who can't do that. I don't get it.
I don't know. What about the Surface? You gonna get a Surface?
Oh, so I must admit, my wallet's feeling really heavy today, so I think I just need to lighten it.
Which one, though?
$1,000 on hardware.
Quite a privilege to have a heavy wallet.
I'm just kidding. But I do like tech. I'm a geek. But the Surface Book looks amazing. The only reason I'm not
Got the thing though.
No, it's been over a year. Just got the thing.
I just got the Pro. Like it's.
You got it when I got mine over a year ago.
A year, like it should last 3 years. A piece of tech. I mean, I don't know. I can't justify a laptop.
Power users don't use laptops for 3 years. I'm sorry. Like people who aren't us use laptops for 3 years, but power users and devs don't.
But don't you still have your X1? That's a great laptop.
No, my X1 is on my desk, sitting under my MacBook Pro, which is brand new, which I use once a week as well. But I just upgraded my desktop at home. I wanted to tell you all about that. So I just put a Skylake desktop chip in my home desktop and a new motherboard and new RAM, and I'm waiting for the new Samsung 950 Pro M2 PCI Express hard drive, which will come out this month. But that thing's, and I got a 4K monitor, and that thing just screams. It's just gorgeous. I love upgrading desktop PCs. That was 6 years since I'd updated that one, because desktops last a lot longer.
I've still got the same one that Jeff Atwood and I built. And I put in like extra RAM and one of these guys, and it's fine. It's very fast. I don't even sweat. I don't ever think about this machine. And as far as laptops, like I know that the W520 is still like a 50-pound laptop, but it's 5-6 years old and it's still brilliant.
Yeah, it's just so heavy though. I'm using the Carbon X1, and it's like
but it's because you're old.
Well, I've been carrying.
I was young and vibrant and had a straight back. I could, carry the W520 all over the world.
It's just too much.
I like to carry 2 or 3 laptops too, like for long flights, and so that it's like if one of those weighs 50 pounds, forget it.
Adam Kogan does that. He puts like 3 or 4 520s in his backpack and just takes off.
Runs up hills. That's how Rocky trained to fight Drago, whatever his name was.
Well, the Surface Book is very appealing to me. The fact that when you take the screen out, the screen is actually lighter than the Surface Pro 3.
Seriously?
Yeah.
It blows my mind. It's bigger. Apparently it has a real quad core chip in it.
If the GPU is in the base and the battery
It's gotta have
battery
two.
in the base, that means that you plug it and there's going to be a little shimmy when the GPUs switch, right?
Well, I don't know. They did it on stage. I didn't notice any shimmy or anything. So
So the idea is you tap tap tap, compile, 16 gigs of RAM. Okay, pop it off, go to bed. Surface Pro on your face, Surface Book on your face, watch Netflix.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but to be clear, it'll have 16 gig and a quad-core Skylake in the screen. I don't know what the screen battery life is. I'm assuming it's lighter because they put most of the batteries in the base, in the keyboard, and so I don't know, like it's
well, if they put the batteries in the base, it would also make the base heavier, so it'd be more laptop-y.
Yeah, so it's 3.5 pounds total, which is the same weight as my MacBook Pro 13, but it has a proper quad core, so it's twice as many CPUs, and it has a discrete graphics, and it does 12 hours. Like I mean, the thing looks amazing.
Well, so that 12 hours is with the base in there, right?
Of course, it's with the base in. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm curious what the battery life is detached.
I think it'll be about what this gets. I get about 5 or 6 with the Surface Pro 3. I'm guessing. I mean, let's face it. If I bought it, I would be using it as a laptop the majority of the time, and I would do what Scott says. When I want a tablet, I'll just pull it off, and I don't need 6 hours of battery life when I have it as a tablet.
Right.
But if I can get 5 out of it or something like that, and 10.
See, when they say stuff like twice as fast, that's like shots fired, man.
Yeah, because it's quad core with discrete graphics, and it's double the RAM. So.
Okay, so this is the difference. So, like, because they were saying, like, one person was complaining on Twitter, and he was like, "Wait a second, how can Intel chips haven't been twice as anything in a while? What they're talking about is dual core versus quad."
Dual core versus quad. You can get a MacBook Pro 13 with 16 gig of RAM now. It has the same class of hard drive. They're both PCI Express hard drives. So you'll be getting like 2 gigabytes per second of read transfer through it. But I think the discrete graphics, which you don't get on a MacBook Pro 13 either. So.
Oh, I see. So it's twice as fast as a 13-inch MacBook Pro. Is there like a more pro machine? Is there like a 15-inch or a super?
It's a 15-inch MacBook Pro, which is proper quad-core chips and discrete graphics.
Okay, so this might be as fast as that.
That's what it sounds like, and because it's Skylake, it'll be faster than.
Interesting. So just to give a little context to the 139 people who are watching us, as we have not talked about ASP.NET yet.
Sorry.
Just to be clear, we knew nothing about this.
Yeah.
I had no idea this was happening. Did you have any idea this was happening?
The only things I knew about were what I read on public. I mean, there was a rumor there was going to be a 14-inch size convertible, and I read that on like Ars Technica or something last week.
Right, but we didn't see it before. We don't have the hookup. We don't have one on order. We're not special.
I literally just pre-ordered my band right now while I was setting up. And the only reason I haven't hit order on the Surface Book is because I want to make 100% sure that it's a quad core. It doesn't list it on the specs yet, so I'm just going to hold off a bit on that before I go and splurge.
Well, it looks like they just updated the website.
They did, yeah. I've been reading all that, yeah.
Which I presume is running ASP.NET as it should be.
Yep.
Struggling because everyone's beating on it. Like the giant picture in the background is not loading. Oh, there it is. The ultimate laptop. You know what I like about all of this?
Yeah.
I like that they are being bold.
Yes, me too.
And they're saying like ultimate, like they're not being like, well, it's really nice.
No, they feel like devices for fans, like people who are really just want everything. They maxed out everything. Like there's
yeah. This keyboard looks like, it's like more plasticky. Like this is the felty thing.
Yeah.
And which this is like
too, to be clear. So like the type cover apparently is much better. The key is now a chiclet style keyboard.
So it's interesting that you say that because for the budget minded, myself included, because I don't know if I can swing this. This I understand is backward compatible.
It is.
So I might just want to buy this keyboard and then pretend.
Well, and also with that keyboard, you get that fingerprint scanner, which is nice.
I'll just tell everyone that it's a Surface Pro 4.
You could. Yeah. Yes.
No, I mean seriously, like those, it gets you through the day.
And that's nice there, where he's using it as a tablet, but it's connected. That's pretty cool. Like there, you get the discrete. Like if you scroll down a little bit.
Oh yeah, you're getting all the power.
Discrete graphic.
This here though is a little concerning.
You mean
from a stress perspective?
No, I mean there will be no stress on that. Like they would engineer that obviously such that when it's fully closed, there is absolutely no stress on that. It's designed to be. That is its loose sort of hinge.
You don't think it's a big deal?
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's
And
a
he's got
metal
band.
snake.
This guy's he's got the band on.
You know,
Yeah.
that's one thing I felt like they only did at the very end, where they show the kind of continuum across, and they're like, here's the phone and the Surface and the band and everything. It was a little too disconnected from that point of view. Like, it could have been a little bit more like all the stuff flowing across each other a bit more.
What's the deal with this, though? This is not, like, I have a dock, and it's more like
This
snappy.
this is the new dock. This is the mini dock that's designed. So this does dual 4K out. See, it's got 2 display ports instead of 1.
Okay.
And otherwise, it's not a dock that you sit in like the one that we have. This is one that works on all Surface Pros. That gives you the dual 4K out. And I don't know whether that means it has a graphics accelerator or anything, is it? I doubt it. It's probably just running off the thing. But I don't know. They went with a puck. I'm not quite sure why they sort of flipped.
Well, maybe this is what I always think is so funny. Like, they always imply that, like, this is how this sits on your desk.
Yeah, no, it kind of hangs off because the cables are pulling it off the table.
It's never going to look this pretty.
Unless it weighs 17 pounds, it never looks like that.
Or you put
that would
on
be
it.
nice, though. If it was super heavy.
Yeah.
See, look, it's a pound and a quarter. That's not light.
Not bad, actually. Yeah. That's
But you know, I'm going to have to super glue the thing to my desk.
Oh, totally. Or a couple of Velcro spots on the bottom, or some unwieldy cable.
Where do I want to buy Surface Pro
Type cover. Is that what you want? Oh, you want to buy the Surface Pro?
I want the Surface Pro 4 type cover.
Okay. We're going to watch you spend money? Is this what we're going to do?
Oh, wait a second. Surface Pro type cover with fingerprint ID. They're separate.
Oh, that's the one you want. Yeah. You want the fingerprint ID, man.
Oh, look. A pen tip kit.
Did you see that?
Talk about that, did they?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. They did.
It was fast, though.
They talked about it. They have different pen tips to simulate different pen types. So you can have like felt tip through to biro.
But you know, I've got a fingerprint reader on my Lenovo.
Yeah,
and I can vouch for it being really useful.
Oh, they're fantastic. I love it on my old one. It's great.
When I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, I forgot my password.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was so mentally checked out, and I was just using the fingerprint.
Look at the size of the trackpad now on that thing too.
Why did they make it bigger?
They just look. Well, look at Look at the left hand and right hand side of the keyboard. There's virtually no bezel now. So they've kind of filled the keys have filled out the whole space.
I see.
They've done the same with the trackpad. It just uses more of the space.
They shoved everything out of the way.
Yeah.
So this.
And it's thinner as well.
It does look bigger.
It's much bigger. It's like 40% or 60% or something ridiculous bigger.
Yeah, that seems like something that I want.
Yeah.
Or type. But you have to get it at the Microsoft Store. When does it go live?
Amazon. I was going to say, why don't you just buy it at the Microsoft
Because
Store?
I was just thinking I could pre-order it. I don't know. Because it doesn't look like it's ready to go.
You have to go to the Microsoft Store. You're on the Microsoft.com, aren't you?
Oh.
So I'm on Microsoft Store where I just ordered. If you go to the homepage of the Microsoft Store, there's a whole bunch of stuff there now.
Store home devices.
I thought I was there now.
That's,
Pre-order.
There you go.
So yeah, I think getting the keyboard is going to be my way to glory.
You're going to keyboard your way to glory.
Well, you know, I can't. Oh, here we go. Pro 4 i5. Where's the i7?
Huh? For the Pro 4? I don't know. Maybe it's not there yet. Customize. That's new. That's new. They've never had that before.
No, they haven't. There we go.
Yeah.
Boom. Ooh.
Put it up.
Holy crap.
Yeah, 100.
It's like
100's good for that.
Now, right?
I see. So this is a terabyte of SSD, though.
Well, no. PCI Express. Like, that's even more than normal, right? It's just...
See, this is where the pain... This is the pain right here.
I know.
That's the pain.
You got to load it up.
Where it's like, ew.
Yeah.
How much is it from 8 to 16? If you just leave it 256.
It's only $200. I mean, you have to get 15. I mean, come on.
If 16's available, you need 16. Come on.
Yeah.
Core M. Is that a?
Does that take you down to Surface 3, or can you get Core
M on a Surface Pro 4? No, man, you gotta go. I want to be able to play, Battlefield or whatever on this thing.
I don't. I have a desktop and an Xbox for that.
Well, I'll remote over. All I want to do is buy the keyboard.
There you go.
They don't want to sell me the keyboard.
That's not the one.
I think they embargo it until after the ASP.NET community stand-up thing.
Well, this
No,
story think be a while.
Surface Pro 4 type cover. No,
there,
see,
bottom right.
look,
Bottom right.
learn more.
Yeah, not available yet.
It's not ready. All right, let's do this thing.
Okay.
Valuable information from everyone here. That's first.
So,
I'll buy that right now. All right. Hello.
I'm sorry I wasn't here last week.
Now, Glenn texted me, worried that you were unhappy with his performance last week. I thought he did a great job.
I have to admit, I cringed a little bit. There were a couple of things that were said that were not true.
Okay. Not true as in a mistake, or not true as in we were
mistakes, and I just need to correct some things now. First of all, the ASP.NET Smurf Lab does not run at 1 gigabit. It runs at 10 gigabit.
That's the part that made you cringe.
Yes, because you went off by
he's off by a simple order of magnitude.
You threw him off. You threw him off because you came here and said how you were loving the gigabit in the office, so you went and bought some Netgear gigabit. I'm like, dude, that's like we have 10 gigabit in the Smurf Lab, not gigabit. But that's fine. That's all good.
We apologize. That's clearly my fault.
It's all fine. So some other Smurf Lab updates. We've been doing a bunch of work on perf on Kestrel. We hit 430,000 requests per second yesterday with a bunch of changes that have come through. We have some more changes incoming that we hope to land this week, including getting us back into libuv multi-loop. Currently we're only running one I/O loop because we've switched to a new build of libuv, and we have a pull request out to libuv to fix an issue with our multi-loop code on Windows. So when that comes back, well, that number should go up again. And also we've got some pending changes to our HTTP feature collection implementation on Kestrel to make that more efficient. We've had some great help from the community in this space, which has been really encouraging to see. Ben from Ilia Games has been doing some fantastic work on memory profiling and CPU profiling of some of our hot paths, and he's had a bunch of pull requests accepted. So we've really been encouraged by the interest in this sort of high performance work we've been doing. We've talked before about what is the point of doing this type of work? No website in the world gets 430,000 requests per second, so why do we bother? The things that we have to do to make the server run that fast do benefit everybody. I mean, it makes us look at memory allocation under a very powerful microscope. It makes us look at latency. Like, in order to do that many requests per second, you have to have extremely low latency through the pipeline, and that affects everybody. When you're looking at tuning your homepage performance and you're trying to get your page render time down, every millisecond counts. So it really helps us look at those things. It helps us obviously look at CPU utilization and balancing various aspects of API design that is both performant and easy to use and all those type of things. So, and it also means that when we are compared against other technology stacks, this isn't kind of just this thing that is out there, despite all the other things being equal or us turning out better, hopefully. People can't just say, oh, well, but Scala gets 1.3 million requests per second in their plain text benchmark. We just want to make that a non-issue. So all those things are coming, and we were obviously working hard to make that as good as we can.
This is just a ballpark question, but when do you anticipate one would go to the Tech Empower website and say, oh, there's the list, and there's ASP.NET? Like sometime next year? Or?
Next year. Yeah, next year sometime. Yeah, it's getting too late in the year now for us to sink a lot of effort into getting our stuff stood up on there. At the moment, our benchmarks repo is effectively where we're developing our benchmarks that we will submit to Tech Empower. So we have plain text in there, we have JSON, we have MVC versions. There are big improvements in MVC in this last release as well in terms of throughput and memory use. So continue to see us. The drop-off now when you move from pure middleware to MVC is nowhere near as big as it used to be. So like I think MVC plain text, we're getting 130,000 requests per second, which is fantastic, and we've still got a lot of work to do there as well. But like I said, next year. And we're adding more tests. So we're going to add the single database query test, the multiple database query test, and eventually we'll add the fusion test as well. The fusion test on Tech Empower is the one that does everything. It does page rendering, it does database updates and querying, it does everything in the kitchen sink, and so that's kind of the one that's more real world. So we'll get around to adding that as well. We also started Linux testing on Core CLR for perf testing. It's very early days, obviously. We've only had one core CLR release cross-plat, which was in beta 7. We've got another one coming up in beta 8. So our numbers are not as great there just yet, but we are working hard, and the .NET team is looking at that, and we'll get to the bottom of what our bottlenecks there are, and they are unique. They're different to the bottlenecks we see on Windows. It's a very different I/O structure. On Linux, we have a different thread pool. We have different randomization libraries. Like everything is, everything is different. Everything that's on the hot path is different on Linux, and so we have to do a bunch of work there to get our numbers up to where we currently are on Windows. Speaking of beta 8, we did move the release from this week to next week. There's a couple of reasons for that. There's a bunch of cross-platform changes that came in late that we wanted to include in beta 8, so that we've got a good chunk of new cross-plat features lining up. We have the introduction of a thing called .NET Generations, which you'll hear more about over the coming weeks, effectively making it simpler for people to build .NET class libraries that run on .NET. It's related to the .NET concept of .NET PCLs, where the surface area can version over time, but ultimately it should make it much easier for people to write code that targets .NET Core cross-platform. So this will be the first release that has that, first release of .NET packages that include generation-based assemblies, and obviously our own stuff as well. The HTTP platform handler change, which was our removal of Helios and our centering around Kestrel as our primary web server platform, and our DNX as our one host. Bunch of updates to that have we wanted to make sure we got in as well. A lot of tooling changes required to make that work well. Things like debugging and profiling and launching in VS is now different, because we're still launching IS Express, but that then needs to launch a second process. We need to ensure debugging works and flows across those things properly. And we need to make sure Azure is up to date, or we are up to date to work well with Azure using this change as well. So we're just finalizing those touches right now, so that when we release, hopefully everything will line up and you can deploy on day one. There's also, I believe, a new version of VS Code coming out. They dropped their preview today, and I believe that that'll be publicly available next week, which has changes to OmniSharp, which will make sure it works with our edge stuff as well. So basically, it's about aligning all the various players so that we don't just have this staggered release where we release new bits but nothing works until everyone gets themselves up to date. There's a bunch of other changes that are coming that I can't talk about just yet. That's actually why I was late last week. I wasn't here last week because I was in a meeting talking about some stuff. I'm really excited about it, but we're just not ready to talk about it yet. But I'm hoping next week, or maybe we'll even do a special community stand-up to talk about this, because it's that big, that I can tell you all about some big changes that are coming to .NET and ASP.NET 5, which I'm really, really, really thrilled about.
So you tell us how thrilled you are if you can't do anything.
I know, don't I?
Why? You shouldn't have said that.
I'm not sorry. I am, but I'm not really. Because it's really pretty cool. So, but that will come soon. I also want to give people a heads up that just to remind people where we are in sort of the life cycle of this product. We're about 6 months out from our RTM right now. So yes, we're preparing for an RC in November. There will be a second RC. I can tell you now. There will very likely be a second RC, but our first one will hit in November, and we're about 6 months out right now from when we will drop our RTM. So I hope that helps people plan accordingly and realize where we are in our milestone. Yeah, so they're the big things I wanted to talk about. We have a bunch of questions here, so maybe we just jump right into doing that.
Okay.
Okay.
Suddenly I hear myself, by the way. There's an echo. Did you change something?
I didn't. I did not change anything. Sorry.
Okay.
Will Visual Studio Code be open sourced? Not for me to say. Sorry. Not my product. You'd have to talk to the Visual Studio Code team. Reach out to them on Twitter. They'll probably help answer that question. IS10 is, what's the next one? Will Helios ever return as a supported option in the future? The reason I ask, the prerequisites to publishing to some host servers with the new dependency on HTTP platform handler, hosts will be required to install this IA and may drop support. Currently, there is no plans to bring Helios back. As I said, the biggest issue for us is having to maintain more than one host, which is what Helios would require us to do. And then the introduction of Nano Server would have another host as well, because it wouldn't be running full .NET framework on there. The prereq is, yes, you would need to install the HTTP platform handler on that server. You know, that's a supported component that's been out for a while, so we don't see that as overly arduous. And in order to get performance on IIS, you're going to have to install our ASP.NET 5 redist package on that server anyway, in order to have the benefits of a pre-cached engined image cache or package cache on that server, so that your startup time is really, really fantastic on those servers anyway. So you want to get the best performance out of ASP.NET 5 on Windows, you're going to have to install something on the server. That's just the reality of it. That's part and parcel with us building a new .NET host. We can't rely on what's in Windows anymore. We have to, so you're going to have to install something to get that fantastic performance. And then there's for Windows, that's a continuation. May drop support for Windows 7 since it requires IIS 8+. No, so the IIS platform handler is being backported to IIS 7.5. There will be a new release of the IIS HTTP platform handler next week, and you'll be able to install that down level so that you can run ASP.NET 5 on Windows Server 2008 R2, which is our min supported version. Will there be a cross-plat tool like ILDASM? I'm not sure. I certainly hope so. I can't tell you that absolutely there will be, but I can't imagine there won't be. We don't have a concrete plan for it right now, but everything that's required to make something like ILDASM work will certainly be there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing a tool like ILDASM cross-plat sooner rather than later. Is IIS 10 is finally going to support Wildcast host headers? Will anything be baked into .NET to support this? I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure what part of that in particular they're asking about. So I'm sorry, I don't really have a great answer for you on that. I'm actually not sure what. I'm guessing the wildcard host header support allows you to implement a wildcard in an IIS binding. So when you set up IIS bindings where you have multiple apps listening on the one port and then you only differentiate them by host header, I'm guessing the support for wildcards means you can just put a star in one of those. Given that that is a unique capability of HTTP sys, which is why you require Windows 10 to do that, I'm not sure where you would put that in .NET other than in something like HTTP Listener or Web Listener. So if that's supported in HTTP sys on Windows 10, we will most likely have support for that in HTTP Listener and Web Listener on Windows 10 as well. Have you made any progress on the Rio HTTP server? I've started working on my own Rio socket class if you're interested, but perhaps you've already implemented that. No. So we have not, we actually, to be clear, we have done no work on that at all. Ben from Ilya Games has done all that work, and we have run the benchmarks here in our Smurf lab. He has filed an issue on GitHub under the CoreFX repo asking the .NET team to consider building a Rio projection or Rio API for .NET. Because there are some fundamental differences with how Rio works from standard sort of sockets in .NET, so you wouldn't just be able to sort of flip the switch and enable Rio on the existing socket implementation or the socket abstraction. You would have to have a new API. So that discussion is ongoing. I imagine some point in the future we will look further at enabling something like Kestrel to run on top of Rio when you're on Windows, because the performance and latency benefits are pretty spectacular. But as of right now, we're focusing still on the libuv-based Kestrel, and you know, as I've already talked about, we're already making fantastic performance inroads on that. We answered that. Will there be debugging on Linux from VS will be available? Yes, eventually. There will be, I think David Fowler tweeted a screenshot of debugging using VS Code on Mono on OS X this week. There will be debugging on Core CLR on Linux and Mac in VS Code at some point as well. I don't have firm timelines for that, but obviously debugging is a critical part of the development experience, so we can't say that we're going to run cross-plat if we don't have a top-notch debugging experience, so that will come along. Host headers to MVC routes, star.test.com, foo.test.com, bar.test.com. So routing doesn't actually deal with the host part of the address. The routing only ever deals with the path. So that doesn't really apply when it comes to routing as it pertains to MVC or the route middleware. If you think I'm wrong, if you think we should be able to look at that somehow, then log a bug on the routing repo with some details about how you would expect that to work, and obviously we'll look into that. Love to see ASP.NET Web API, Angular front end with TypeScript, OAuth2 authentication starter template for ASP.NET 5. I would love to see that too. We just don't have the time to do it right now. I imagine early next year, or maybe second quarter of next year, you'll see us look back at that space and hopefully see us land on a more spa-focused experience, including templates. But we don't just want to do templates. I'll be frank. Like we did a spa template before, and frankly, it was rubbish. Like we shouldn't have shipped it. It was just a bunch of libraries in a template with the login screen implemented a spa, and then that was it. Like there was really nothing else about the experience that we built that was differentiating. We don't want to ship a bunch of Me Too things and just stuff to get you started. You can grab those things from community templates. We really want to ship templates in the box and end-to-end experiences that offer something that's different and unique and helps you to be productive. So you won't see that stuff in VS until we have other things of that experience to go along with it. Tag helpers, better editor experiences, designer experiences, toolboxes, those type of things. Something you would traditionally associate with a Visual Studio type coding experience. And we do care about those things, and we will circle back and look at those things once we've got this good foundation out and RTM'd. Have you looked at running ASP.NET with .NET Native? Would be interesting to see a perf difference in something like Rio, but I have found no way of compiling with .NET Native. Yeah, .NET Native and ASP.NET don't go together right now. .NET Native is exclusively for store applications right now. I don't have anything else to say about that, but sure, I would love to see a point in the future where you can compile your ASP.NET app down to a single native executable and then run it in IES via the HTTP platform handler, because you could do that. We want that as much as anyone else, but it's just about doing things in the right order. Will Kestrel need something like Forever.js, like it's with Node, to keep it alive if something happens, or will that be handled by IIS? So if you're running Kestrel in IIS, the HTTP platform handler takes care of all that for you. The HTTP platform handler does process management. So it'll start the process, it detects if the process is timing out, it'll restart the process, it does all that type of thing. If you're running on Linux, you'll most likely use something like Nginx, and Nginx has process management features as well. And that answers that question. So if you're running on Windows in IIS, IIS does all the things it used to do regarding process management. You don't lose any of those capabilities. That's one of the reasons why we're working hard to make it work so well behind IIS, because you do get those capabilities. We answered the open source thing, and we answered Joel's question. How can I get Europe Moscow time zone on Windows? Now this code doesn't work on Windows, but some worked in Mac OS and Linux. Time zone info file system, time zone info via the Europe Moscow. Sorry, I have no idea. No idea. I don't know what the.
I think the point there is it's a .NET Core question. You probably want to ask Emo, but he's pointing out that time zone info comes out of the industry and it doesn't exist on cross-plat.
Yeah. So.
Actually, I did a podcast about this about Node time.
Yeah, culture and time zone information is a tricky one cross-plat. I can tell you that Beta 8 does include culture support on cross-plat. It'll be our first release that does support that. We have to use an external component in order to do that, which contains the culture information. There are really two databases for culture information in the world. One is with the Windows database, and one is an open source one that I believe is what the component that we're using in Beta 8 is based on top of. So I don't have anything specific about that particular API, but that's, as Scott said, that's something you can possibly ask on the CoreFX repo. What is the packaging and deployment story for regex files coming in Beta 8? That is, can we create separate class library project to package the regex files so a NuGet, sorry, it's jumping around, so a NuGet dependency to pull it in? Will it be possible to add other languages by pulling in I think that was meant to say different packages or something. So in Beta 8, we will improve our regex/localization support. We're adding back support for the regex file generator in Visual Studio. So if you just want it to work like it always has in .NET, where you have a regex file which generates a static resources.cs file, and you can just access your resources that way, that will work. And the DNX project, or the DNX compiler, will compile those as embedded resource assemblies inside your package, which is what you would expect it to do, or satellite assemblies inside a package. It'll also be able to read them out of a package, so you should be able to do what you're talking about there. And then with our new ASP.NET 5 localization APIs, the iString localizer, that will all work as well as part of Beta 8. So you'll now be able to do have regex files for different cultures. They'll get compiled down to satellite assemblies, which are embedded inside of your package, and then they can be loaded out at runtime via our default implementation of iString Localizer, which uses the Resource Manager APIs under the covers. Of course, now we have an abstraction, you can also build your own implementation of iString Localizer that uses a different file format. I think someone on the team here was prototyping using the PO file format, which is used on Linux. I think it was done as part of the GNU project, which actually supports some more features of localization that we don't, things like string pluralization. So we could potentially add a new interface at some point, I pluralized string localizer, that would support things that the PO file format can support that we can't support with Resource Manager alone. So we have started thinking about some of those things, but there will be some improvements in beta 8 around that space. Will there be any breaking changes after RC1? Hard to say at this point. Hopefully in the ASP.NET layer and up, the answer is no, as much as we can help it. There may be some changes sort of underneath the ASP.NET layer that we can talk about a little bit more in the coming weeks. But I don't honestly know because we haven't built it yet. That's as frank as I can be. Saw Mads released JavaScript and TypeScript linters this week. Any update on split screen JavaScript, TypeScript for VS 2015? So I know Mads' team, the VS tooling team, which is right behind the screen I'm looking at right now, is working very hard on enhancing that experience in Visual Studio. We got a lot of feedback about the Gulp and Grunt integration that we did in VS and the Bower integration, and that yes, if you use Bower, Grunt, and Gulp, they love to see first-class support for those things. But we also heard a lot of feedback from people who don't use Grunt, Gulp, and Bower, who perhaps are familiar with our runtime bundling systems or the Web Essentials type systems in VS and wanted something that was as simple as those, with a very declarative configuration model, perhaps some UI, a lot of right-click mouse gestures, that type of thing, without having to learn an entirely new task management system. So there's a lot of work going on there that we'll be able to share soon to sort of address both aspects of that sort of feedback and have a grow-up story as well. We don't want to create two separate worlds, obviously, because that doesn't really serve anybody, but we do want to ensure that we serve the full gamut of sort of complexity when it comes to using task runners. And for people who just want to get stuff done for the 80% case where they don't need rich composition, they don't need to be able to pull in the vast library of Gulp or Grunt tasks. They just want to be able to do the top 20 things that you need to be able to do. I need to be able to combine files. I need to be able to minify files. I need to be able to transpile. I need to be able to compress ping images. I need to be able to do linting, etc., etc. We will have an out-of-the-box experience for that is very visual, so that someone in Visual Studio will be happy with that, while still being command line driven, so that when it runs in your CI server, it works. And then there's a nice smooth upgrade path to doing something like Gulp if you need that full experience as well. So lots of stuff coming there. We have heard the feedback and we're working very hard to improve that. David Fowler said, yes, you would show us Hello World perf for Helios IS Beta 7 versus HTTP Platform Handler IS Beta 8 in the benchmark repo. True, question mark, question mark, question mark. Just curious about it. Yes, so I actually did allude to that when we wrote the announcements blog post. For the plain text, when I last ran that, and I'll run it again this week, given all the changes we had in Kestrel. When I last ran the Hello World plain text benchmark with Kestrel behind HTTP Platform Handler in the Smurf lab, we were getting about 50 to 60,000 requests per second. That is still more than virtually every website on the planet gets. So in real-world applications, we don't expect it to have a huge impact. Most applications, when running production, run with multiple layers. They generally have an edge cache, a reverse proxy system of some sort, that then have some type of front-end a process manager, and then they actually have the application process. So in something on Linux we're using Nginx, you'll generally have a layer in front of that, maybe a big IP device or some type of round-robin load balancer. So you generally have multiple layers involved with processing every single new connection and request that comes through. This is no different. There is overhead involved in doing that in terms of throughput, latency, and performance, but obviously the benefit is that you can do scale out and process management and lifecycle and all those type of things that you can't do if it's just a single process. Single process is always going to be faster because there's just less to do. And that's not the reason we're doing, we've talked about this before, like there are reasons why we focus so heavily in some cases on this plain text, very focused throughput benchmarks versus real world, massive scale out architecture throughput as well. There are benefits that we get from one when applied to the other. But I will run those numbers again this week, and for people who are interested, I'm happy to put the results of those numbers up on the web page. But you just have to take in mind that you can't compare those numbers to things that you see in Tech Empower, because Tech Empower doesn't run with front end in front of it. Okay, it's always raw against the process that's running your application, because that's what they're trying to measure. Can I run unit tests from VS Code? You can, in the sense that you can open the command palette and run your test runner from the command palette. I don't believe they have a test runner built in, and I believe there's been much debate about whether they will or won't, but I don't have any other information for you other than what's been publicly discussed. Publish exclude in Project.json does not seem to let us exclude things below root. Will that be fixed, or is there any guidance how to manage client dependencies in dev versus production to exclude the extra cruft from below root? I'm not sure. I didn't realize it didn't work. I haven't actually tried it. So in my mind, you should be able to use a globbing path to exclude stuff explicitly under root/lib/whatever. If that doesn't work, follow the bug on the DNX repo, and we'll take a look at that. Otherwise, if you want full control over what goes into root, you have to use gulp, and you have to use a copy task, and you have to handcraft it. That's the reality of it. Bower packages, for better or worse, often include more than just the files needed to run that package. And if you want to exclude those files, you either manually delete them and then check in your root/lib folder, or David Faust, we already answered that. Currently in Beta 7, there is the one lonely DLL in the web root bin folder, the bootstrapping the runtime. Will that go away in the new hosting model? Yes, it goes away. That was only there in order for Helios to determine that it had to shortcut the booting of system web. That is no longer required. So that bin folder will disappear, and ASP.net.loader.dll will disappear in Beta 8. Scott, can you mark these questions as answered? They just seem to be lagging. Maybe you are, they're just lagging, I don't know.
So I switched away and then to a different Google Hangout thing, and then it all became out of sync.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I'll just scroll down.
Sorry.
Are there any updates to flushing response streams? At the moment, if I call context.http/context.response.body.flush in an action filter attribute, it says the response has already been sent. Any updates towards flushing? Well, that is likely because headers have already been sent, I'm guessing. I'm not sure of any specific issues with that. I mean, you can call flush from inside a Razor view. You just have to know what you're doing. Because as soon as you flush bytes on the wire, we can no longer do things like give you an error screen if something goes wrong. So you can absolutely do flushing, but you have to understand at what points in the life cycle of a response you can do that, and the trade-offs that you have to make when doing that. If you have specific gripes, or you've found specific issues where you think it should work but doesn't, log an issue in the requisite repo. And here that looks like it would look at the call stack that you get if you get an exception, and then make a determination about whether you should log that in MVC or HTTP abstractions or hosting, depending on where you find that call stack. And if you can't figure out, just log it in one of the repos, and then we'll figure out which repo to put that issue in for you. We've done that one. We've done that one. Okay, Joe asks, in early betas there was the Bower components folder, but now that goes under root/lib. Yes, I assume we want to process what we need for production into another folder like root.js.
Yeah, well, they're just basically saying
to leave out, but yeah, I answered that before.
Yeah, I mean, this is just the issue about whether or not you Bower directly into production or not.
So we did that to make it simpler, but obviously that has the side effect of everything that Bower restores goes in root/lib. If you don't want that, then you need to do more manual processing, because that's just the nature of Bower packages. Whether you delete them manually or you write a task to try and automate that, which is what we tried to do in the earlier templates, then you can obviously do that if you want to do that. Publishing, we did that one. David, we did that one. Caroline, I think we've answered all these now.
Yep.
There was one, Glenn was talking about a new way for managing packages. Can you share more information? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that's referring to.
New way for managing packages.
If you're talking about distribution of the bits, we're building that out right now. So we will have a Debian, so, an apt-get feed for getting stuff very soon. Glenn has a version of DNVM that pulls DNXs off Azure Storage now instead of from MyGet feeds. And that same Azure Storage is being used to create apt-get or Debian feeds so that you can do a apt-get DNX or apt-get ASP.NET 5 on a Linux machine and get stuff using the native Linux packaging as well. So maybe that's what he was alluding to. We also have PKG files for Mac that are being built. And my hope is that as part of the Beta 8 release, or at least very shortly after it, we'll start making available those builds so that if you're on a Mac, you can just go and double-click and install the latest PKG file, and that will get all the bits rather than having to use Homebrew and Mono or just curl or whatever it is. And you can just take a very nice, clean PKG-based install of all the bits to get it on your machine, including putting it on your path, which is also nice as well. Are you going to support NPM3 to fix it? Yes. So NPM3 has greatly improved the max path length issue on Windows by maximally restoring NPM packages into a maximally flat folder structure. That question, I'm assuming, is alluding to the support in Visual Studio. I haven't actually tried just changing which NPM Visual Studio uses by fiddling with the settings and tools options, but you should reach out to Mads on Twitter to get a more concrete answer, or log a bug in the tooling repo on GitHub, so we can get that tracked, and so we can get a more concrete answer on when we'll see NPM3. I don't think NPM3 is actually released. I think it's still in betas. I think there's like all the releases they're doing currently are still labeled as betas. I might be wrong on that, but I thought they were still in betas. If not, then we should work quickly to try and get that integrated, because I know the experience will be greatly improved for people on Windows. Is that it? I think we've now answered them all. That
was heroic and impressive in its endurance.
There's a couple more flowing in now. Will localization be finalized in Beta 8? It won't be finalized. It'll be better than it was in Beta 7. So it'll be improved. The one thing that's missing still is support for localization in DTH. What that means is if I'm in Visual Studio and I have regex files in my web application, when I hit Control F5 and run in the browser, they won't, localized bits will not flow from Visual Studio into the running application process in Beta 8. If you need to see that work, there is a hack to work around it so that the running process doesn't use the DTH. It'll recompile it manually from scratch, which means that you will get those localized bits. That will come later. We just didn't have a chance to fit it into DTH, and I'll put details of that little hack you can put in if you really, really want to see that work while you're in Visual Studio.
Joe is upset. He says we skipped one of his questions.
I'm sorry, Joe. I think I answered like 17 of your questions, but if I missed
He had some sort of question about compiling views into a NuGet package or something.
Compiling views into a NuGet package?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, we're struggling with this Q&A system here. It's a HTML plugin to Google Hangouts, and it is. Maybe we need to try Crowdcast next week.
Maybe.
I think we are jumping the shark when it comes to our Q&A management. It used to be 4 or 5 questions. Now it scrolls and it's not synchronized between our computers.
And the worst part is the person answering the questions, which is generally me. I don't get to control which one I'm answering. You do all that.
Yeah.
Well, you could maybe.
I don't see any UI here for me to do that. So
you don't have select and done like I do?
Nope, I don't either.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe I got to figure out how to make you a presenter.
Okay. That may make it a little better if I can actually highlight.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, sorry about that. He says packaging up views.
Okay, so packaging up views. That's a long-standing ask about a good way to do componentization of bits that you want to run in MVC. We're not quite there yet. There is a new pre-compilation support in Beta 8 for views. I personally haven't tried it by having a views package, or like having a class library that has views that compiles out. That is a very difficult problem to make work really, really well, and to get support in Visual Studio and all those type of things. I am keen for people to try it out with the rough support that we have now and give us feedback on if it works at all and how we could potentially improve it. But I'm not making any promises that there will be a very crisp experience there for RTM, because it's a very difficult problem. But we do care about it. And the other one that comes up a lot is multi-tenancy in MVC, which again is a very difficult problem. We can play whack-a-mole and just try and fix every issue that people come up with, and they say, hey, I'm trying to do multi-tenancy in MVC. But to do it really well, we need to think about it holistically and then craft and design a proper experience that works end-to-end with all the parts that make that work end-to-end. we've kind of avoided just saying, oh, someone's logged another bug in multi-tenancy, let's fix that, and then wait for the next thing. We're trying to delay that until we can really sit down and focus on it properly. And right now, we're just busy enough getting ASP.NET 5 done as a solid core before we start doing the high-level features. Given the current release cycle, will RC be in December? No, RC is still slated for November as of today. That hasn't changed. Does VS 2015 ASP.NET 5 template compile even when we use a recent version than Beta 7? A more recent version than Beta 7, does it compile? You have to keep the references in your project up to date with the runtime pieces that you're using. So if you're using a version of DNX that is newer than Beta 7, you have to update the package versions you're using because we do make changes that render those packages incompatible. So yeah. Okay, the Mahalo setters in 10 is why I was asking about multi-tenancy. Fair enough. And will you support generations of XML comments and feed them into ASP.NET 5 for use with libraries like Swagger for Swashbuckle? I'm not quite sure what generations of XML comments looks like. Like, how do you version an XML comment if it's not on a different class? Or if it compiles down to an XML file in your NuGet package, I'm not. I mean, is that what they mean by generations? Like, if I issue a new release.
No, he's just saying to generate. The idea that you're in a web API, you go whack, you type, and then it pops into Swashbuckle. I think that is the intent, that your XML comments show up in your Swashbuckle in your web API.
Yeah, that does work now. So like, we do get XML comments being generated, XML files being generated from .comments on methods in C# and classes. That should work already. If it's not, again, if it's not for a scenario that you care about, then log an issue. And do you know if there is a un-CSS feature npm mod? No, I'm sorry, I'm not
up. I don't know what un-CSS means. Maybe he's talking about like unminimize.
No, it removes unused CSS selectors.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, again, those are that's the internet, right? That's the great thing about all of this ASP.NET stuff is that is there a thing? No longer is it an ASP.NET only question, right? If there's a cool npm module that we should run or some cool grunt or gulp task we should be using, then we'll use it.
And you can just add it to your package JSON, add it to your gulp, and there it is.
Yeah.
So. Cool.
Does Kestrel support HTTP 2?
It can. Is the way to answer that. So HTTP 2, we support opaque upgrade on Kestrel, which means that as long as the underlying server can give us a stream, we can upgrade to any standard that you like. And so there is an experimental middleware that has been floating around for a couple of years now. It was originally done as part of MS OpenTech Labs that supported HTTP 2 on Katana. And the intent is that we could port that middleware to run on ASP.NET 5 on Kestrel so you could update. Now, if you're running behind IIS, HTTP 2 is not supported in IIS until Windows 10 because it's required that you have the latest version of HTTP sys, and that's a Windows component, so you need the latest version of Windows. If you're running cross-plat, then all you'll need is that middleware in order to get HTTP 2. We haven't done the middleware yet, to be clear. There is a piece of middleware that exists already. If you can find that, and you can obviously, you could probably hack that to work, but we will do that at some point. It's just not top of the priority list right now. Oh. Okay. Why would you want to use?
We sit here forever, right? You know, the questions will never stop.
I know. I know. Maybe we should just stop.
Well, I mean, just saying, we could sit here like all day and see how long it goes if there's an infinite number of questions.
In VS21X, can we have a no caching while developing link beside browse with? As much as I love browse with and browser link, the configuring of webconfig and webconfig debug make me forget how to eat my morning oatmeal. I have to eat oatmeal.
Okay, see, this is what I said about not answering any more questions.
Yes. I think that's a feature request for the tooling team. By all means, log an issue on the tooling repo.
No caching while developing.
Yeah, I think they want to be able to set a button in VS that says, do not cache anything in the browser.
Well, like in development mode in Rails, right? Like they just, caching is off. That would be more of like a Kestrel thing, right? Where you just say...
No, I think they want it to turn off cache in everything. like including the browser. They just want a one button that says, I'm developing, turn off cache.
Oh, well, so my solution is use incognito mode.
Yeah.
You know, when I go to browse with, I have a blog post on this.
Yeah,
I add browsers as incognito, and it boom, cache blocking.
Glenn tells me that the bug around root and a publish exclude has been filed and is assigned to RC1, so we will fix that bug in RC1. Why would you want to use webhooks instead of Signaler or vice versa? Because they're technologies that serve
totally different
purposes.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually a good answer. If you want to go to my current blog post on webhooks and ASP.NET and scroll down at the bottom of the comments, and Heinrich, one of the architects of webhooks, answers that exact question.
Yeah, so
one is persistent, one is not persistent.
This is the difference between real-time persistent connections and real-time push to connected systems. So it's a different experience. Signaler is designed for systems where there is a person sitting in front of the screen. You want a real-time persistent connection that you can, full duplex, send bytes both ways. Webhooks are designed for systems integrating with each other when you have an addressable endpoint at both ends, so that the system that is the source of the change can push that change to another system that has an addressable endpoint. Signaler is designed for systems that don't have addressable endpoints, like phones and web browsers and desktop applications. They generally don't have an HTTP endpoint that a server can push to, who would want to manage millions of connected endpoints in order to push stuff out to in real time. It just wouldn't scale. So they're very different technologies with different purposes. And that's it. That's all questions answered. Cut off the questions.
Quick, hang up.
Close the pipe.
Cool. We survived. I think, really, frankly, you're doing all the work, though. We should just call this Damien Answers Questions.
If that's what people want, that's what.
That's not totally true, Scott. You did click through the process of trying to buy a tablet.
If that's what people want. This week on Damien Answers Questions.
Awesome.
All right, let's get out of here. We got stuff to do. I got a one-on-one with Hunter I'm late for.
Okay.
Cool. Dramatic zoom out.
It's engaged and running. Bye!